Hello, I'm Proper Horror Show. This is my commentary for Scream 5 or Scream from 2022, and this is part of the Blockbuster Project Rental Breakdown. I hope you've got your copy of Scream 5 ready and playing. If you have, you are looking at a film that is 1 hour 54 minutes long, give or take, and we are 20 seconds in. You're seeing the logo now for the new production company Spyglass, of course, taking over from Miramax, or more specifically Dimension, as that is a company very much in the past now. This is a new creative team, a new creative endeavour, and a team that has a large challenge ahead of them. That is going to be a lot of the focus of my commentary. This new creative team, by the way, it's Team Radio Silence under Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette directing, and the writing duties are falling to James Vanderbilt and Guy Busick, and all four of these had worked together on the last film, Ready or Not. Now, I'll skip over the production details for the moment, we'll return to them, because the opening scene in a Scream film is always absolutely crucial. Ever since the beginning, that opening scene is so important. And that is because the first one came out, and in an era of low-quality sequels, which it was constantly addressing, Scream was trying to show you with its opening from the very start that horror is worth watching, that it had something to say, and that horror could be intelligent and effective. This version of Scream, it's got that same challenge. It's got to match the energy, match the quality of the other Scream series, other entries in the Scream franchise. But it's got the additional challenge of trying to show that it is like a Scream film. It can effectively fit into the franchise, and that it is a worthwhile film for a new generation who doesn't know the original, who remembering that first one, it came out over 25 years ago at the time of recording, which I should state is November 2023. We're going to see one of those chief challenges is just the level of technology. In 1996, when you open with someone picking up a landline phone, it's just normal. Already they're showing you in those messages that they're very aware the landline is dated. The call from a stranger on a landline, it's got a bit of a whiff of the past to it. So I think just showing Tara here, played by a 17-year-old at the time of filming, Jenna Ortega, is a clever nod that they are aware times have moved on. They're not ignoring that development, but they are trying to show that Scream can fit in with a new time. So that update to include DMs is very clever. We're also going to see here a nice little move from Jenna Ortega, which is going to show they know the originals extremely well. Obviously, when Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore in the original, took that call, she was famously making popcorn. Jenna here is making ramen. You're not going to see all that much, but you can tell it's ramen in the script. She is going to make a little move in a second that is a lovely tribute to the original that die-hard fans are going to catch. And it's not going to be obnoxious to people new to the franchise. This little movement with the knives here is just such a lovely echo of something Drew Barrymore did in the famous opening scene of the original. Now, they've talked about Tara's mother here, Sam and Tara's mother. We're going to cover her in more detail later when there's a more quiet moment, but I just want to focus on the opening here. What they're discussing now as one of the other key challenges in how to make this work is they've got to be very aware that slashers aren't the main horror at the moment. They're a little passé. Scream 5 is incredibly aware of this. They've just raised the issue of elevated horror. They are very aware of that. They're not ignoring that issue. And I very much like the reference there to the Babadook and so on. So they've got to make the case in this era of the Babadook, of It Comes at Night, The Witch and Hereditary. Can we be effective? This is what they're trying to answer with this opening scene. It is, of course, very, very weird for me to think there are people who haven't seen the original Scream. It is very close to my heart, and it's why I chose this as the first commentary I'm recording for this project. I still have my VHSs, and I saw it back in the day. I was far too young to actually get into a cinema to see it, but I was at that wonderful age where a parent could just leave the freshly rented VHS with you. and I've seen it far too many times since that. It is very near and dear to me. So we're about to get a lovely tribute here, one of several Hitchcock tributes in the form of a Vertigo shot. That's going to come now. It is a wonderful move. As I said, several Hitchcock tributes into this. You're not going to be surprised because, of course, Hitchcock's Psycho referenced many times in Scream, both in character names, Billy Loomis echoing Sam Loomis, the secondary male character in Psycho, but also the references to direct quotations. We all go a little mad sometimes, absolutely famously said. We're going to get the next reference in a few minutes, and it's going to be a musical cue echoing Psycho itself. So one of the tricky tasks that they've got to do right now is drop a little bit of exposition for those newcomers, to those people who haven't seen Scream or, in this movie's universe, Stab, and are possibly resembling a lot of the audience Zoomers who have just gone to the cinema who don't have an extensive history with the series. It's a weird thought for me. It's because this is such a formative film in my cinematic upbringing, I suppose you could call it. But they have to drop a little bit of history for this, a little bit of exposition, and that is what this opening quiz to Tara is doing. It feels to me very believable that she would just be looking up answers on the phone, and of course, Ghostface doesn't care. You know, she can answer those questions perfectly correct. He's still going to take her out. And Jenna Ortega's way of playing Tara here is extremely vulnerable, very young looking. I think is a really smart decision. She looks terrified. She is really selling this performance. I love what she's doing. The bad way to have approached this would have been to go on the meta, go on the irony, give yourself that protective shield of irony like you don't care. And that's kind of the approach that Scream 4 took in its opening. I might discuss that more later. Here, they have gone hard on intense sincerity. They are selling this as genuine terror, very much fitting the new mould of horror, which is extremely sincere. The elevated horror that Tara references, it plays everything absolutely straight, and that's what she's doing here, which we should also note is not out of touch with the original. Drew Barrymore didn't play Casey with much irony at all, and that is key to the way Wes Craven would deliver horror in the original. Now, all the other things that she managed to do there, as well as get a cute reference to Jennifer Jolie at 7 minutes 30, that is a reference to Scream 3 when the character Jennifer Jolie was playing Gale Weathers in Stab. I meant to try and catch that at the time. But they're also, as well as dropping exposition about the world of Scream and the original, they were also starting to fuel the Stu Macker is alive theories. And that was a major rumour when this was starting, that Stu was going to come back. It was going to be Stu is a ghost face in this. Far-fetched, very unrealistic, I would say absolutely out of character, but nevertheless it is a fun rumour, far more suited to the films that Scream satirically references than Scream itself. But it was very interesting that with all the rumours swirling around about that being an actual possibility this time, that they put a little fuel on the fire with that by having the line, "Everyone always forgets about Stu." So when you're watching this film, keep an eye out for those. I think they were consciously baiting the audience here. I also very much like that they've done the other technology update, the smart locks, but it's not intrusive. We aren't going to see them in the rest of the film. They've just put that here kind of as an acknowledgement that things have moved on. In Scream 4, in their opening, the way they addressed the rise of technology was talking about the idea that the killer should be on Facebook, which would of course be disastrous. I am extremely pleased that this film did not take that route. So, Jenna's performance here, she looks terrified, she looks messy. I love it. This is horrible to watch. Whether you are new to the series, whether you're a veteran, this is brutal. By the way, we're about to get, as well as a horrible injury, we're going to get, there it is. The musical cue reference to Bernard Herrmann's score for Psycho just dropped in there. A fantastic tribute to horror history and to the original. But most of all, what this is doing is showing brutality, showing a level of nastiness that we haven't seen in the series before. This leg breaking, the knife through the hand, the focus on the agony that Tara's feeling here. This is really important to move away from irony and get people to sincerely engage with this. Making the case that Scream 5 is back, the Scream series is back, and it is worth taking seriously. Now, I've chosen this as a subject for a commentary, not just because the original Scream is really important to me, but because the the commentary from the filmmakers for the original Scream 5 is, in my opinion, I'm sorry, terrible. It really annoyed me. So, in that whole opening sequence where I, as a fan of the series, I really wanted to hear about the artistic decisions and have them confirm, hey, was that a Bernard Herrmann score reference? I wanted to hear them talk about the storytelling choices, the casting choices, the direction that they were going for. And instead, I'm afraid if you watch that opening scene, which is so crucial to setting the tone for the whole movie, you will learn none of that, and all you will hear is the Radio Silence team talking about production meetings and meeting with people who owned the rights, and the sort of time they had to write it, and then further meetings they organised with each other. And it drove me absolutely loopy. They were talking about things that were just maybe at the best trivial in-joke references. So things like a product name on a prop will be a reference to a friend of theirs in real life or a member of the crew. And that's kind of a cute detail. It's a little bit of trivia, but it doesn't really grant you all that much understanding of the film. And at worst, they are just talking about, say, inside baseball details of production meetings that I don't think is helpful to understand. And this I think, kind of typical of commentaries. I think it's very rare you get one that helps you actually understand the film. You often just get people saying, it was really cold on set that day. The catering was good. Or, you know, the kind of expected, oh, this actor, oh, they're so great. They're so great. Oh, this person's just amazing. Wasn't she so good? And it's weird. They all sound like that terrible accent. I know you might think no one sounds like that, but that is what they all sound like. So I find most commentaries an absolute waste of time. And what I'm going to endeavour in this is to give you a much better understanding of Scream 5 than you would get from that commentary. So here is our cast. Here is our newbies. At the start of the scene, by the way, the voiceover that was coming out of the speakers, that was Drew Barrymore from the original. Voice cameos in this occur frequently, and they are very cute tributes that don't get in the way. It's a very sort of, how can I say, it's a really clever move for giving nice treats for the fans, not being obstructive to newcomers, but it also gives you a kind of buy-in, because the filmmakers for this, they needed buy-in. This series has a very loyal following, and they had to show that they had people from the original who believed in them, who supported it. This wasn't a parasitic project. That's what they need to prove. So having cast members from the original come in and support this and make little cameos in it, that really helps. The cast were protective of this. Nev Campbell wasn't sure about coming back at all, and it really did take a lot of convincing for the filmmakers to show that they were going to do it seriously. It was going to be a tribute to Wes Craven, and it was going to add to the legacy and do him proud. In this film, I'm going to make the case they absolutely do. And we'll see a lot more blatant effort on this point later. For now, I don't want you to take this harshly, but one criticism I have on this is that in contrast to the original, although all these characters are meant to be high schoolers, it really doesn't feel like they're in high school at all. This is the only scene that we'll see of them at school. They are not going to be in any classes. I don't think they're ever going to mention school again over the course of this film, and it seems like a bit of an afterthought. Now, this film, best I can tell, takes place over 3 days. So maybe that was Friday and everything else is on the weekend. Who knows? But it was a little detail that I noticed, that the film wasn't heavily invested in them being high schoolers. I'll have plenty of chances to talk about the rest of the characters later. I'll try and cover them. But I want to say very early in that scene, we saw Jasmine Savoy Brown as Mindy, showing a sick sense of humour that I thought was very endearing, very, very fun to me. I liked it. And it also helped sell her connection to her uncle Randy. We will find out that they are related to Randy later, but it was very nice that it was characterised very early on. While I've got a little bit of time here, I'll go back to something I did want to address earlier, which is how Scream 4 introduced things. So I talked about the early reference to trying to update technology by talking about a killer who's on Facebook. Terrible mistake, and luckily they did not do it. But the thing Scream 4 tried to do was go in with the irony. And they gave you a fake out, followed by a fake out. And then you hit the real thing. By the way, Elm Street on the sign there. I could fill this whole commentary with little in-jokes and references. I will try and avoid doing that. But by Scream 4 doing fake out within a fake out, I was already sort of emotionally distanced from the film. So when I was actually meant to take things seriously, I couldn't engage. I couldn't engage at all. It was a big mistake, and I have warmed massively to Scream 4 since I first saw it, and I was very late in seeing it, I should say. But it did make a mistake in the beginning. I'm very firm on this, whereas I was much warmer on Scream 5 to start with. I still very much like it. The mistakes in it are harder to spot, whereas I think the mistakes in Scream 4 are more obvious, but the high points in it are subtle and rewarding. When you work out what it's trying to do, effectively inventing requels, which are sort of a subject of Scream 5, I tend to realise that and be much more forgiving of it. I also want to point out at this moment here, Chad in the background there, played by Mason Gooding. This is the only scene that he has with Tara, which is very funny because they are set up as a love interest in Scream 6, and it comes absolutely out of nowhere. Even the filmmaker's commentary acknowledges this. So it cracks me up to see that scene now, and just how they have absolutely no interaction. They say nothing to each other. And then in the next film, it's, oh, I've wanted to kiss you for so long. Yeah, the filmmaker's lack of foreplanning does manifest in some interesting ways here. Now, one of the other things that happened in a change from the script to the original is that, well, while we're talking about Tara's relationships, it was originally with Amber. Yeah, they make a load of references to Wes being into her, but originally Amber was her love interest, which I think is still something you really get the vibe of from the original. They were explicitly lesbian originally. That text wasn't about to come over, wasn't about raiding a liquor cabinet. It was, well, I'm not going to make the crude joke about liquor that I could. This is far too classy a film commentary for that. We'll talk a bit more about sort of the vestigial elements of their relationship, but fascinatingly, while Amber and Tara were confirmed lesbians. Mindy was actually very de-gayed. Later on in the party scene, she is still in the original script, which is written as a Parkside Alpha. She's making out with a Francis still, but that Francis is a dude. So there's a little bit of the old gay switcheroo, which I found quite interesting. Something else I want to note, and this scene seems like a really good time to say it, is as well as the technology moving along, the times have moved along. This is a grimmer world. This is a far grittier, grimier Woodsboro, a less wholesome Woodsboro than we have in 1996. You know, along with the, I've got to say, notably excessive swearing that I do have a problem with, there's this implication that Vince Stumacher's, I believe, cousin, who looks to be in his, looks to me like late 20s, had been sleeping with a 17-year-old Liv, who is now dating Chad. That's kind of grim. It's grotty. I wasn't a fan of that. Liv, played by Sonia Amar, has a surname McKenzie, by the way. And if you want that deep trivia, then she is indeed one of the Mackenzies to whom Casey Becker's parents want to run in the original Scream. It's a nice little payoff there. And of course the original Go Over to the Mackenzies is a callback to Halloween. The trivia mines run very deep in this film. The writers, the filmmakers, they really did their homework in looking into this stuff. I do find this kill quite acharacteristic and a bit gratuitous, but on the other hand, there's good logic for it. So, playing Red Right Hand here, it's a tad excessive, but it makes a lot of sense because the killer's playing it out loud in a way that would probably attract attention. It's a silly thing to do, but what they're trying to do is embody cinematic logic. They wanted the classic stab soundtrack of Red Right Hand playing while they did a kill. And that's why they popped that on, and it is that insight into what the killers are motivated by, which I think makes this a really good fit for the Scream universe. They understand the logic behind Scream. This scene right here, perhaps arguably less so. Now, Kevin Williamson, the writer of the original script, did have involvement, I should say the first 4 Screams did have involvement with this film, but he said this cameo of Skeet Ulrich returning as Billy, this is very unlike Scream. I'd say the closest we got to this sort of hallucination, otherworldly aspect is in Scream 3 with Sydney's dreams of her mother. This is very unlike Scream, but Kevin Williamson, I feel I should note, did encourage them to go with it anyway, as it was interesting, as it did move things on. And I've got to say, I still love it. This was an absolute treat for me as a fan. The digital de-aging they did on Billy there, I think, I should say on Skeet Ulrich, I really loved it. That was an absolute treat. But it does strike me as a little odd here that they've tied it into a sort of psychotic episode, that Sam takes medications to not see him. That is a lot more actual cinema logic, film logic, than what really should be the Scream logic, which is a real life world, maybe slightly heightened, in which some people attempt to live by cinema logic. It also means that this scene is a bit tricky. I have a major problem with this one. That is Ghostface attacking someone in midday in a hospital in an incredibly public place. And I've got to say the logistics of that are absolutely ridiculous. There would be CCTV absolutely everywhere. There is no way you do not catch this person. Not a chance. There is no way that the CCTV evidence doesn't make it extremely easy to work out who Ghostface is at this point. So that is shocking cheating. It was poorly decided. Yes, Ghostface does come out in daytime in the original, because Billy and Stu were trying to do some movie logic where you do, a la Halloween, get glimpses of the killer in daytime, building up to the terror that comes in the night. But gosh darn it, there do need to be some limits there, and I do retain some problems with that scene. Again, really nice in connecting this to the Scream lore. We have Deputy Judy Hicks returning here. This is lovely to see. It's so nice seeing her. Where she manages to get a 18-year-old child from, I'm less sure about that. That's a little bit of a harder sell, I've got to be honest. I was just trying to remember the name of the actress, and it's absolutely escaping me. Marley Shelton. Marley Shelton is the actress's name there. What I'll talk about there, what I want to add there is, as well as it being nice seeing her back, it's nice that her character's got a bit of an edge to it. Even in Scream 4, she had a little bit of a cougar thing going on. She was openly flirting with Dewey and antagonising Gale because of that. I like that she's retained it. She's got quite a sort of steel backbone to her. Something else that I should probably talk about here is, yes, it's a little weird that she's managed to get an 18-year-old son out of nowhere in the 11 years since Scream 4. But as we are finding out in this very scene, yeah, children out of nowhere is something of a thing in this Scream. As we are finding out that Sam here, Sam Carpenter, Tara's sister, is Billy Loomis's daughter. Billy Loomis's secret daughter. Now, Billy was about 19 at the time, at the latest of Scream. So the logistics of this are, I've got to say, pretty difficult. I do feel it's a bit of a reach, to be honest. They do something with that logic, but I'm going to be honest, this is one of those stretches, one of those contrivances that is a bit of a hard sell. In this era of very late sequels / requels, you see it a bit. The Craft Legacy, which is, by the way, an absolute vortex of shite, horrific film. That also did the secret child protagonist ploy, which actually ended up being slightly more believable than this. I'm not going to harp on about it, but to be fair, I've got to say it is a weakness in the storytelling for me, that you've just got this kid coming out of nowhere. You've got to wonder who was Billy even sleeping with. He was in a relationship with Sydney, so he's got to be playing away. It's all a bit of a stretch to think that Billy Loomis has a secret Latina girlfriend that we've never seen mentioned, even though conversations, say, in the school bathroom that we see clearly show that he's quite desirable. One other aspect of, and maybe I should say a slightly trivial tribute aspect of it, is that if Sam Carpenter here is Billy Loomis's daughter, then that would mean her name could really be Sam Loomis. And that would be a callback to, yes, Sam Loomis, played by Gavin Miles in Psycho 1960, who would go on to lend his surname to Dr. Loomis in Halloween, who then lends his name to Billy Loomis in Scream, and etc, etc. Of course, the Carpenter is a very obvious reference to John Carpenter. I have to stop myself going just down an endless trivia train here, because, again, that could be the whole commentary, and I don't think you'd get a deeper knowledge of the film from that, but it is kind of a nice to know. What maybe is a lot more important to talk about here is the family relationship here. Very swearily expressed through Tara, but they have a very intense relationship. This intense focus on siblings, I think, was a great decision. There is criticism for Melissa Barrera's acting, Melissa Barrera as Sam. In this film, I don't go with it. I like her. I like her a lot. I think she does a really good job. She's very distinctive. Jenna, for me, is the far stronger actor, but I don't go for any criticism of Melissa Barrera's performance here as Sam. It is fine. And the decision to focus on sisters here, on the importance of family, that is absolutely crucial to selling Scream 5 as a Scream movie. Because the importance of family is a key theme in that. Families are absolutely essential to Scream. The trauma of losing Maureen Prescott carries on to affect Sydney. It's also got the link to the motivation of Billy, kept secret from Stu, that it was his family being destroyed by Maureen sleeping around.
I love you.
Yeah, Billy losing his family due to Maureen Prescott sleeping around wrecks him so much that it's really his secret motivation that he kept secret from Stu. I thought that was a great move. So family, incredibly important. It's very key to the Wes Craven rule, which, to be clear, is reminding you that in a horror film you might see horrible things happening to a person, but the key thing is that they are a person. They are someone who has a family, who is connected to people in a community, and that their death is a tragedy. It is a harsh contrast to the kind of cheap killing of randos that you see in a Sean Cunningham Friday the 13th movie, which obviously Wes Craven had a hand in the making of. Well, I should say, he had a relationship with Sean Cunningham in the early days. They never, as far as I know, had any falling out, but they very much went their different ways in filmmaking. I think partially because Wes Craven never wanted to be a horror director. He had a knack for it. And the classic thing about horror that even holds true today is you can make a good horror movie incredibly cheaply. So if you're looking to get your start in the movie making business, horror is where you go. But Wes never wanted to just be a horror director, and he actually, bless his heart, he tried to get out of the world of horror many, many times. His real dream was a passion project called Music of the Heart, which was a sort of drama, light-hearted drama. And he was so proud to make that, but people did want him to keep being the horror guy, and therefore that kind of pragmatic thing meant, he did keep making horror movies. But while he did that, he always remained, how can I say, he kept a sort of cynical mindset out of it. He remembered that the victims in horror movies matter, and there's that sort of humanitarian aspect, that humanitarian mindset that I think elevates what he does above most horror films. Just apologise there, I am recording when I have a slight cold here, so if I'm sounding a bit raspy, do forgive me. Now, the Wes Craven rule is quite a deep topic there, so I've talked about that a fair bit longer than I intended to, but I really want to move on to Dewey now. I'm a bit late saying this. It's very cool that we met Dewey on his own first here, before the new characters come to meet him, and of course they do that at 31 minutes 30. And the reason I specified that is you've given us a half hour to get invested in the new characters, which is a sensible move. The legacy characters matter, but we're predisposed to be identified with and invested in them. If you're introducing new characters like you do in a legacy sequel or a requel, you've got to give us time to adjust to the new characters. So it was very smart to keep that distance. Scream 4 did not do this. The legacy characters were in from the start, and that's because they were commenting on remakes and accidentally inventing requels at the same time. Catching up with Dewey, I think this has been something of a controversy. One thing I just note there is that he said they would have 2 minutes to talk to him, and he actually gave them 2 minutes 30. He's very generous. You also note that Richie, when he just walks out the door, lets slip a little bit of familiarity that he has with the Stanford franchise. Now, you could say he picked all that up from what he was watching in the hospital, but I think he sort of drops a little clue for people looking out that maybe he shouldn't know as much about Stab as he indicated he did there. Catching up with Dewey also lets us catch up with Sydney, and this is something that I absolutely love. I think Wes Craven would have been so happy with that. Here we see Neve Campbell again as Sydney Prescott, and I love that following her arc, the completion of her arc in Scream 3, I have questions about her role in Scream 4. She's happy, she is healthy, she is a married mother, she has 2 daughters at least. The Scream 4 Sydney, I was not really convinced that it was the same character that we saw in Scream 3, who completed her arc and got over her fears and was able to stop being so guarded. This is a far better continuation of Sydney for my money. And it's so nice to see her. Neve has been doing this role for so long. She's got a deep understanding. The line that I'm sorry, I'm going to swear here. When she says, she's asked about having a gun, and she says, "I'm Sydney fucking Prescott. Of course I have a gun." She improv'd that. It stayed in. I absolutely love it. If you listen to the filmmakers' commentary for this, they also show how much knowledge she has, that she was on set and they're filming longer versions of the scenes, and she was just telling the filmmakers, "You're going to cut that, you're going to cut that," etc. She knows the business. And as I said, she was right. She really knows how these films work. It's so nice to see Sydney over her trauma and adjusted. It is such a great tribute. It is consistent, and it is something I think Wes Craven would be extremely proud of. She's done a lot better than Dewey and Gale, and it's nice to see. Now, Dewey here, this is difficult to see. I'll do a quick nitpick here. It drives me absolutely crazy that in him messaging Gale, they have no message history. Drives me absolutely nuts. There is no way that they wouldn't have messaged each other before. So, minor nitpick. Let's talk about the serious stuff. The filmmakers here are going to show you why they deserve to make this film. I have deep... there we go. That little look at Tatum, the tribute to Tatum, that proves that they know what they're doing. Tatum, Dewey's sister, played by Rose McGowan in the original, was never mentioned again in the series. And it seemed like quite an oversight, I've got to say, that they never referenced Dewey's sister dying horribly. Whereas seeing that little tribute to her, that she still matters to him, that really grounded Dewey, and I found it an extremely touching moment, I've got to be honest. It really sold it to me. But I'm going to park that topic for now. We are going to talk about Dewey later, especially when he meets up with Gale. For now, I really want to focus on the scene in the House of Tributes, which is really just paying off long-term fans, trying to win us over. I'm going to be honest, it totally works for me. We have, of course, a lovely portrait of Randy there, but also notice that photo of the cinema marquee. That is showing only Wes Craven classics. The Craven tributes, they are numerous, folks, and they're lovely. You look at the posters in the background as well, there's some absolute vintage stuff. Amicus's skull, the Blob, the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956, which was also directly shown in Scream 6. I'm guessing it's a favourite of the directors, probably. But most of all, seeing Randy and his own Memorial Homes Theatre, it absolutely works for me. It is a great payoff for long-term fans. As is seeing Martha, played by Heather Matarazzo, quite a niche actress. It was really quite unusual for her to pop up in Scream 3 for a very short cameo, And bringing her back for this is, it's some attention to detail. Now, why is she there? Why is she there? Because Mindy and Chad, as we find out, are Randy's niece and nephew. Yes, now they went through some changes here, of course. They went through some interesting changes. Obviously, they are being the Randy stand-in, especially Mindy, but they were changed quite a little bit. They're in as Chad and Mindy Meeks Martin, but in the original script they weren't. They were Meeks Martinez, and we actually met their dad, Carlos Martinez, in this scene. And I'm going to be very honest with you, I read that script and it was not worth it. The character was extremely cheesy. He really didn't add anything to it, so frankly, it's fine that they take him out. But obviously, Carlos Martinez, he was Latino, and they've changed that with the casting. And so their father is not Latino, he's going to be a black guy, and the surname is Martin and not Martinez. But we don't really learn any more because they don't have this guy in the script. Like Samantara's mother, they ultimately cut him out. It's somewhat odd that, you know, he was originally a Latin guy turning up in the film, and then they made the father black and he disappears from the movie. What did the filmmakers mean by this? Obviously nothing, you absolute racists. It is a weird little, how can I say, awkward thing there. But seriously, cutting the guy out was a very sensible decision. I think probably a reason they made that change is they probably realised that they're going to end the film with all 4 surviving new characters being Latino or half Latino. So yeah, they probably decided to shift up their casting a little bit there. And I know this is sort of baiting another question that we do need to talk about at some point. And that is the issue of how sort of updated for modern audiences, aka diversified, aka wokeified, the Scream sequel is, and it's an awkward topic and it's not one I like talking about, to be honest here. I know a load of people saw, say, Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding as Chad and Mindy and sort of thought, okay, it's the message, it's the updating for modern audiences, and I get it. That is almost certainly in there. It was almost certainly done for that purpose. But the fact is that both Chad and Mindy, for me, are absolutely fantastic. Jenna Ortega is absolutely fantastic in this. I can't be mad. I love the really dark humour that Mindy brings here. She totally wins me over. Even if they have done it for that reason, for their ESG points, I can't say I'm mad about it. However, something I'll talk about a bit later is the fact that the original script had a few more obviously on-message jibes in it, which were very wisely taken out. So in this version, in Scream 5, the message is obviously there, but it is diluted. It's very diluted. And I think it's unfortunate that you'd only really notice it if you were digging into the original script, whereas very unfortunately you get to Scream 6 and it is there, pretty undiluted. Now for my money, that issue of making films woke, updating them, diversifying them is actually a really obvious topic for Scream to discuss, but for very obvious reasons, they aren't going to go there. Mostly because they can't comment on it from the outsider's perspective because they are doing it, unfortunately. Now what they actually wanted to talk about there was the issue of requels and toxic fandom. I'll talk about that more in depth in the finale, but just in terms of what they dropped there, they brought up the idea of fan rage, and they kind of showed their hand a little bit in having a very stern rebuke, say, from Wes when someone asks what a Mary Sue is. Incidentally, while we're on this topic, this line originally from Judy was asking for extra soy. In the context of what we're just talking about, I'm very glad they changed that line. Now, moving back to our topic. having that reaction to someone asking what a Mary Sue is, as if that is an absolutely ridiculous thing. It doesn't exist. It's a horrible conspiracy and you're wrong for even thinking of it. That is unfortunately the writers tipping their hand a little bit, and to be honest, Wes's reaction is not exactly believable. But they're setting the groundwork there for what they want to do, commenting on toxic fandoms, and also getting in a reference to Rian Johnson and thereby The Last Jedi. In this film, Stab 8 is kind of their Last Jedi, and the fact that they reference it as being directed by the Knives Out guy really gives the game away. You'll notice just then that jump out was totally faked and there was no way she didn't see him, but she only reacted to the cue. Total cheat. We also got a little definition of requels there, which is, again, something interesting to raise, but I've got to say it doesn't land as much, and in a weird way, how can I say, there's not much to say about it because it's so much in progress, the whole concept of requels, whereas weirdly enough, Scream 4, to my mind, invented requels. Now, I came to it really late in the day, so I think I first saw Scream 4 about 2018, and by then I was used to requels. I didn't realise what was going on, but they were commenting on remakes and introducing legacy characters into a remake, and thereby basically doing a requel, or what we would now call a requel, a legacy sequel. And I was so late seeing that film, I didn't really appreciate it, and it's one of those reasons now that I see Scream 4 was really ahead of its time, even if it did naturally bring in some of the problems that made it hard to, say, bond to the new characters. Like, we had access to legacy characters from the start, so we couldn't bond to the new characters. Whereas Scream 5 very wisely starts off with the new characters and gives us until the half-hour mark to reintroduce a legacy character into the picture. Very smart stuff. This daytime horror, this chase here that Judy's doing, still having the phone call with the legendary Roger L. Jackson. It is very interesting to see her get the call for me. I don't recall her getting a call in Scream 4, but the fact that she's concerned about her son, I really like this. I think Marley Shelton here is selling this so well. She's totally broken out of her police character, and she is. Nice Psycho reference, by the way, with the shower shot. Sorry, when you're doing these commentaries, there's always about 5 things you want to talk about at any one moment. This concern for her son here, it's a new angle. I love it. It's again, it's something that I think Wes Craven would really applaud. This deep concern about family, the fact that family is what matters here. I think it really sells it. It's got that sense of urgency that I absolutely adore. The filmmakers are also having a bit of fun here with a kind of modern interest in deconstruction and gender reversal. In the fairly simple case that it is the mother concerned about the fate of her kid, the mother who has to be the protector, and it is the son here, the male, who is a bit of eye candy in the shower. And the fact that he's, also being shown kind of Ella Marion Crane in the shower there with that shot, I liked. It's kind of harmless, to be honest, maybe to be expected. This murder in broad daylight, I would say again, it's effective, it's harsh, it's well sold. I feel awful for Judy Hicks there. She was going to save her son, and it's very believable that her mind was so set on that she never considered herself. She was just set on saving her son, and so she wasn't looking out for herself and went straight into the trap. That is effective. But at the same time, this is another Midday Attack, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think you've got to have the logic of, surely someone would have seen Ghostface. Surely there was a risk of being seen out in the open. But there was great attention to detail in that scene as well. As ever, in a commentary, there's about 12 things you want to comment on at any one moment. You can look and see that the officer she's texting, you can get the officer's name, and that name will turn up on an officer's badge immediately after this. Right here, we're going to see a continuation of that deconstruction and updating, as we're going to have an extended play on the sort of advanced jump scare. So just watch this scene, watch us be sort of set up for jump scare after jump scare, and it not delivered. Nice Berkey filter, by the way, respect that. One of the other weird details in this was in the original script, when Judy originally, when she was on the phone with a sushi restaurant, she said, I want extra soy. And that was wisely taken out there. She asked for something else. Should also point out that Dylan Minnette here has got some horror credentials. He was in Fede Alvarez's Don't Breathe. And I'll be weird and point out I find it so odd that they have 4 Ben & Jerry's tubs there. In the fridge. Why in the fridge? It's so odd. I know that shouldn't be the main focus of that scene, but I just noticed it and it struck me as really weird. Also, Lemon Squares reference. Many Scream 4 fans appreciating that. So there's always a bit of an innuendo quality to Lemon Squares there. As I was saying, this extended sequence of setting up a jump scare and not going for it, it's cut down from what they actually made, but I love it, and it's part of what I was talking about earlier at the very beginning about Scream 5 needing to make a case for its place in the modern horror environment. Jump scares have evolved a lot, and especially because of films like The Conjuring, where you'd expect the usual payoff at a certain point, but you got a delay, and then they'll give you an extra delay, and finally you would have that payoff, the jump scare hitting you on the downbeat when you haven't expected it. It's really a jump scare designed for people who've seen many, many jump scares, and based on their expectations, not the average audience member. Scream 5 is definitely doing that here. The locking of the door is a tension dropper. The locking of the door is what lets you relax. And that's why at that exact moment, that is when Ghostface has to attack. I thought that was so well done. We're also going to get my favourite death in the movie here. Dylan Minnette has, despite really good horror credentials from Don't Breathe, which I massively recommend, also starred Jane Levy from the Evil Dead remake in 2013. I love this. He's kind of stepped away from acting. He's more of a music guy now, but I love this effect. It's, again, like the beginning, it's a level of brutality that we don't really expect from Scream, but isn't out of place. This isn't chainsawing someone from groin to gullet. It's just a slight advancement that is interesting to new fans. It was also great use of a latex applique on the neck, and then some CGI to enhance the effect. It was very grim, very nasty. I loved it. You know, long-term horror fans, you've got to give us something interesting, and that really worked. It was something that felt extreme, but also not so extreme that you couldn't connect with it, which is, I think, where a lot of horror goes wrong. If it's so extreme you can't empathise, you're gonna lose people and it won't be as effective. Now finally, we do have the return of Gale here. This is perhaps inevitable, but it was saved for a good moment. And this is, I think, some of the best performance you get from Courtney Cox. Again, someone who has had quite a break from the character, but knows it so well that she brings quite a level of class to it. I absolutely love seeing the legacy cast come back and have so much maturity and bring so much world experience with them that it adds a depth to these characters that really enhances the film to me. This is something that will not work for newcomers. But frankly, if you come in 5 films into a series, I'm sorry, you're going to have some things alienate you, because this scene is all about the history of Dewey and Gale. I also like that when Gail came in and met Sam, she was met with some reverence, and that was really good because both in the in-universe explanation is Sam is excited because she knows Gail from the TV, but it also matches our sort of audience expectation because she's a legacy character. That is good writing. Have something written for the audience that makes sense in universe. I want to really praise that sort of stuff now, because if you watch my take on Scream 6, I am far less complimentary of it, where so much is written for the audience that makes no sense in the world. By the way, that camera crew who came with Gail, they will disappear, unfortunately. They are forgotten about in the movie, just like the mother of Sam and Tara. Now, this is a scene filled with pathos. I know a lot of people weren't happy about this. They didn't like the idea of Dewey just sort of abandoning Gail at very short notice in a kind of cowardly way in the night. I've got to be honest, I don't like it either, but I can understand why in a sort of urban liberal environment, urban showbiz environment, that marriages wouldn't be as stable and that he would have trouble adapting to that world. I can get that. I can understand him not wanting to be part of that, but sneaking away I don't think is very Dewey. It's tough. I know people would say this is kind of a rubbishing of the straight white male character to tarnish him. It is unfortunate that it is part of that trend, but it does feel more justified than a lot of those instances. Even if I'm not a huge fan of this decision to sort of portray him as being at fault there, I do think both of them absolutely sell material. This scene is a huge contrast. There are some lively in-jokes and meta, and there's also something really deep, something very interesting in that in what is not in this scene. What was cut out of this scene is really interesting. Now, one of the things there is a cute little in-joke to the Stab series, and the fifth one being where it all goes wrong. Obvious joke, but you had to do it. That is Matthew Lillard doing a cameo as the Stab 8 Ghostface, having a whale of a time. And you'll have also noticed a YouTube channel there, Film Fails. Now, the actual people cameoing there are the presenters of Dead Meat, a massive YouTube horror channel. I can't say I watch it myself. I'm not trying to cast any shade, but it's not the kind of thing I watch. It's a bit of a superficial, more light-hearted view of horror, and as you can tell by the kind of stuff I make, that is very much not what I'm into. I like the deeper dive, and I can't say that the sort of worldview of that channel as I've caught it is exactly one I agree with either. There is a nice early Dawson's Creek footage there. Obvious for me, maybe not for a lot of the newer audience. Dawson's Creek was teen drama written and created by Kevin Williamson, who also wrote and created the world of Scream. Very nice reference in there. I'm sure he enjoyed that. Now, the thing I really wanted to talk about that really got my interest is something that was not in the script, in that scene, that was cut out of the script, and that was Ritchie's original criticisms of Stab. Originally, what he said about the series was, there are no black people in the first one, so they cast 2 famous black actors in the second one and then kill them before the opening credits. And he then says, and apparently gay people didn't exist in this universe until Stab 4. Now, this was a really bad thing to say, and it was very good that they removed it, but I've got to say, it worries me that that was in there in the first place. When Tara in the opening makes her criticism of Stab, she talks about it being overlit and everyone's hair looking weird. It's a light-hearted reference. It feels very true. Yes, when you go back and look at it, it is lit far brighter than movies today. So it's a criticism that rings true. It's a loving criticism. But implying that Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson are racist because they didn't cast black people in the first one, not a good move if you're trying to make a loving tribute to a director who died far too young. And also the implication that Kevin Williamson, an openly out gay writer who included lots of gay characters in his work, didn't want to include them. Very bad take. I mean, there are many... I won't get drawn into it, but it's worrying that they wanted to include that line in the first place. And unfortunately, in Scream 6, that kind of predilection, that kind of inclination that their worldview gives them, they got to run wild with it, much to the detriment of Scream 6. I also have to say that this idea of the logic of moving Tara to a private floor of the hospital to be safe really doesn't make much sense either. It does make for an amazing set piece, an amazing scene. And Scream, we've got to say as a series, really excels at doing set pieces. It's a bit of a calling card of the series. And this is one of the best, I've got to say. Even if the logic of a private floor in the hospital, where fewer people can see her, doesn't exactly hold up for the purposes. It's also a very different lighting scheme, which I think makes great atmosphere. If you're wondering if the hitting Richie with a phone is a callback to Stu being hit by the phone and saying, "Hit me with a phone, dick," it is. It's very deliberate. That is also a deliberate reference to Scream 2 and Derek getting cut in the same way. Anyway, again, in jokes for days. This is one of my favourite sequences in the whole movie. I think this is so darn effective. They build this massive corridor here. It really emphasises how bleak Tara's plight is, how much control Ghostface has here. And I love it. It's a good extension of that rule. We take this seriously. Tara was not killed. I don't think I emphasised how important that is, that she managed to survive. I mean, that actually ties into the killer's plans, as we later find out, but the fact that she survives and we see her bearing the impact of those injuries now, Wes Craven would approve. You see the struggle she's in. This is very new territory for Scream. It helps us take it all seriously. There's also a major change here in that Ghostface actually gets to speak whilst on screen. You see that he has a little voice modulator under his hood there. That is a major innovation for the series. It helps here, but I can't deny that it is a bit of a problem in a sense. Like, if you want to be extremely literal, as I tend to be, there are a few scenes where if Ghostface is actually speaking while he's there, then him being able to sort of hide behind something whilst talking on a phone call with someone and then attacking them. I guess the first attack on Sam in the hospital is the best example of that. That is a bit of a weakness, you know. They would hear him talking. It is a slight problem for the suspension of disbelief. I also really want to highlight what Ghostface was taunting Tara about, which was about abandoning the family. Taunting Sam about was taunting her about abandoning family. And that is a classic example of horror expressing traditional fears and mores. Basically, it's a reactionary aspect of horror, that it is pointing out what they know is deeply wrong. It's basically punishing them for that wrong. That's a very instinctive, intrinsic aspect of horror, that it will talk to our very deep fears, no matter how sort of out of date they are in a very progressive world. Horror is more effective when it talks to what is true and instinctive, and Sam's guilt over abandoning her family for her sort of own gain of what was easier for her. Great example of that. Now, we're coming up to an extremely divisive part. Just look at how Richie's face then. He was genuinely worried. That moment I really appreciate on rewatches. At that point, Richie, you see, is bricking it because he thinks his partner has gone down, and he is worried then he is about to be exposed any second. He's terrified. He's wondering what the heck to do. I love it. Yeah, this is controversial. This is very controversial. Because they're about to kill a legacy character. And this was controversial. A lot of the cast didn't want them to do it, but even asked them shoot a version where he can live, but they went with it. And I've got to say, I approve of the decision. I'm gonna quibble how they did it, but I think it was right to do. I think a lot of the characters have had plot armor for too long, especially Dewey, to be honest, and so I think it was the right thing. This really gives Ghostface teeth. It helps us take it seriously, and I think it's a good payoff. Now, his little smile when he got to see Gail reaching out for him and see her again on the screen, that's tough. That's so tough. Now, my preferred method there, I think him being distracted by a phone call, I wasn't a fan of it. I do like how the editing there kind of gives you time to breathe. This focus on the van and the lights. It's a moment of quiet so we can feel the impact of that scene. It's respectful. And Courtney Cox is going to absolutely sell this wonderfully. She's going to make you feel the impact. Now, it wouldn't have been my choice to do it like that. I didn't like Dewey getting distracted by a phone call. I still think it's good that he died, but I would have had it go a completely different way. You would have to move Richie around for it, but my preference is that Dewey should have been taken out by two ghost faces. Now, until Scream 6, we never saw two ghost faces on screen at once before the finale, but Scream 2's original script actually had that in, and I think that's effectively been a bullet in the chamber that they've been able to fire for a long time. Now, Dewey should not have made any mistakes. He should have kept his distance from the Ghostface and been professional and ready to take care of business, and then taken out by the second Ghostface by surprise. That would mean that he doesn't make any mistakes. We're not having any earth-shattering revelations that there are two ghost faces. We're used to that. But them acting in that close coordination is fairly new at this point in the film. And therefore, I think it would land incredibly well. Not just for being an iconic moment of two ghost faces at once. Not just for the death of a legacy character. But I think it would, in a certain cinematic logic, if you will, it would pay a greater tribute to Dewey. The idea that you need two of them to take him out. It's movie logic, not real life logic, but it would show a respect for the character, really. And that's what I would have liked to have seen. That would have been my preference. Now, in this bit, coming back to the present, I could quibble the fact that Sydney gets here so quickly. We don't know when this is, presumably a couple of hours after Dewey's death. I'd prefer to think it's the next day, just for logistics, but you probably shouldn't think about that too much. But Courtney there was just being absolutely wonderful, just selling that. The strength of the relationship there was worth lingering on. It showed the connection. This is all stuff that has that humanitarian perspective that really is important to the Scream series, where people's relationships really do matter. There's just a lot of heart in it, and I really like that we have that scene with Sydney comforting Gail, and we follow it with this scene between Sam and Tara, kind of reconciling, talking through their differences. There is a lot of heart in this scene. I really appreciate it. They're dealing with the messiness of human relationships and how it's easier to just look after yourself, how it's easier to sort of wall yourself off. And they're making the strong case that you've got to pitch in, you've got to stick through the messiness, really. I think that's a great message. I think both the actresses are selling this stuff really well. And it's nice that the film gives you time to breathe. This is not a short film, this is an hour 54. This is long for a Scream movie. The original is an hour and 40. But they're spending time on what matters, and I really appreciate this. They're also going to go into, right there with that line, sorry for swearing again, but saying, we're going to do what no one ever does, we're going to get the fuck out of here. Brilliant line. Also great Scream logic. I should point out the difference here. So, it's a classic Scream move. Now, back in the original, Sydney's complaint about horror movies, famously, is that they're always about some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the front stairs when they should be going out the front door. It's insulting. Sydney then, when she's attacked by Ghostface in a minute, is immediately going for that front door. Ghostface manages to effectively block her, and she's then forced up the stairs. But she tries to get out of that door first, bless her. That's good Scream logic. They don't let movie logic take over, but they also don't let harsh realism ruin the story. It's a balancing act. And here, with Sam saying we're going to get out of here, lovely. They will be sabotaged, but gosh darn it, their instincts are right. I also really appreciated the realism here that Sam and Sydney have this kind of awkwardness, because yeah, they don't actually know each other. They've been forced into this weird connection, but they don't actually know each other. It's handled very well. They're respectful of each other, but it's realistic.
Correct. And I'm what in this scenario? The bait? The helpless victim?
If the shoe fits, you're not helpless, Sam. He killed your friend, he killed ours, and I have kids, which means I won't...
There's another thing here that I noticed, kind of how could I say, it's characteristic of the movie, that there's a slight shift, and very notably in this one, of the habit of talking about Ghostface as if he is his own entity, rather than someone in a mass, like just referring to Ghostface, talking about he, even though Ghostface has been female many times. The fact that when Dewey is killed, he is killed by Amber, who is a teeny tiny woman, played by Mikey Madison. You know, there was criticism that was cheating, the fact that, Ghostface should be tiny. And if you saw tiny Ghostface, because of Ghostface being Amber at that point, Dewey shouldn't have been taken up. Well, the filmmakers talked about openly, well, Ghostface is kind of his own thing, so it's not cheating. I don't know how sympathetic to that argument you're going to be. I'll leave that up to you. So going back to that other bit of Scream logic that I wanted to talk about, the fact that they're trying to get away, but the asthma inhaler is missing, and she needs the asthma inhaler, something set up from the very beginning. It's not just a cute little, disability representation. It's integral. And this is really good writing, as well as us giving the joke about her heading to 123 No Fucking Way Lane. Oh, I love it. This is brilliant for the killers being able to have a bit of control over the situation. Also, nerds like me will have noticed it is the original Stumacher house immediately at this point, but you don't all have to, you can be well adjusted. That's fine, I won't judge you. I'm going to point out a massive change that they put there, as well as the For Wes sign. As I told you, they are really trying to emphasise what a tribute this is to Wes Craven, and it's very appreciated. In that For Wes chant, there are numerous voice cameos. Just as there is one saying, "Hey Freeman, nice house." That is by Matthew Lillard, whose house this was in the original. I've got to get off the pure in-jokes. There was a decision originally that the reason they went to this house wasn't for an asthma inhaler. It was so Tara could get a necklace that Amber gave her. Because as I said early on, originally the big gazer had been fired on Tara and Amber. And I just saw echoes of this all the way through the film, that it felt like the logic was that they were together, and not just close friends. And I was very intrigued to actually see that I was right from the original script. So originally they were coming back so that Tara could say bye to Amber, and then Amber and she wanted some time alone in a room, and Sam is like, okay, so they go off. And to me, it's flimsier. I massively prefer that the reason they had to come back was an inhaler. That is good writing. Let's keep talking gay for a minute. As I already mentioned, Mindy there wearing a little pride pin. Whatever. I almost wonder if that was like pressure from Jasmine Savoy Brown. She's very vocal about progressive politics in real life. Maybe she pushed hard for her to get to be able to play Mindy as gay. Very possible. But it's just interesting that they did that switcheroo. Also on Chad, you notice that he has an earring and a piercing in his left ear only, which is a bit of an old gay signifier from back in the day. But then he's been hooked up with girls twice. So I don't know if they originally intended him to be gay as well and then they switched it around. It's hard to tell. But it was a little odd detail that I noticed here. In the scene, I also found it really weird because the last time we saw him, he was kind of angry drinking in the kitchen and getting scolded by Amber. And now his mood has totally changed, but then maybe a well-applied French model will do that for you. I did mean earlier to talk about Sam and Tara's mother. You know, while we're on the subject of massive changes from the original script, we might as well cover this now. I've been meaning to touch on it quite a lot. So in the original, she was in the script. She was cut, but she was originally called Susan. In this, she's referred to, but she's now referred to as Christine. Again, Christine Carpenter, obvious John Carpenter reference for the Horror Insiders. And she turns up in the scene where Sam storms out after the first big meeting in the Meeks Martin house. She has an argument with the mum, and that's what upsets her so much that she just crashes the car. Crashing a car is kind of expensive, so they just had a sort of scare with that. But in this, no mum at all. And I found that really weird. They do reference... I thought she would just completely vanish because I found it so weird that she doesn't go and check on her daughter in the hospital when she's been stabbed. But they do say that she's in a conference in London, which I guess justifies it. But it's a little stretch. There is Frances there. But ultimately she doesn't appear. And even though in interviews the directors had said she's super important... and they had plans for her in Scream 6, she's completely written off. So it's a little weird. You get a very changing story from the creators on how important Sam Tara's mother is. And I've got to say, the way she's sidelined, I'm not a fan of it. And I don't think Wes Craven would be. By the way, watch this candlestick. It's not actually a problem, but I was convinced that was a continuity error for ages and it bugged me. I thought there was only one candlestick and that he took it and then it reappeared later. It turns out I was wrong. I probably shouldn't even be filling the commentary with that detail, but, you know, maybe you can get an idea of how I watch a movie and how I try and understand it. Here is another good example of the movie adapting for current times, bringing Scream into a modern world. The Find My Fam app, I believe it's I'm quite a Luddite, so I believe it's based on Find My Friends. At this point, they're doing a good job of taking advantage of this to give you a good scare. It's not technology I'm familiar with at all, but I thought this broke things up and it was an interesting premise, very well done. Now, as I said, I really liked Chad as a character. I thought he was played fantastically in this. When he comes back in Scream 6, you know, he's about to have a horrible time. And but in Scream 6, unlike Dewey, who he's kind of a stand-in for, the Scream 6 commentary has the filmmakers even call him the new Dewey. He's not going to have any semblance of a limp. He's not going to show any impact from this attack whatsoever. And then he's going to get an even worse attack where he's stabbed 14 times and survives again. You can see why I'm very keen on them removing the plot armour, even from characters I like very much. There's a touch on here that I've really loved. Often adding technology into movies, especially horror movies, I say, worsens them. Like, mobile phones took away the ability to isolate characters, you know, much to the detriment of horror. Things like this where he couldn't activate it because his hands were smeared in blood and it was messing up the touchscreen. I loved that. That was such a good touch. And also him football throwing the phone away, I thought was great logic. There's some good thinking there. I don't think I've mentioned at this point, all of this is a set. In contrast to the original, to help with secrecy, they were shooting this all on a set, which I guess you can notice. When you're told that, you just notice some of the framing is more set friendly. I didn't twig it at all when I was watching it in the cinema. They've also at this point taken care to try and conceal the fact that this is the old Stumacher house. They're going to do that big reveal. Unfortunately, nerds like me noticed the second we saw that door from the outside. I know. I'm cool sometimes, I promise. But otherwise, it was also given away in the trailers, I've got to say, which I thought was a bit of a disappointment because it's such a strong reveal. You have to be careful with things like that. You have to be careful with things like that. They can be just member berries, you could call them, just fan service. I don't like to think of it that way. I think when you build a story, you set up certain things that gain resonance and gain importance. And you've got to be careful with them. But they are powerful things to be used, and something like a return to the beginning, it has that power. Buffy season 7, going back to a rebuilt Sunnydale High School, great example. You can't do it all the time. It has to remain believable, but it has power and you should use it. Now, admittedly, there's a slight weakness in that Amber basically says she was radicalised after moving to the house, so it is a pure coincidence that she ended up in Stumacher's house. Anyone who wants to say this is a weakness and a contrivance, I'm not going to argue with you because it kind of is. But I'm also not going to be super harsh on it either. If you are listening to the official Scream 5 commentary now, by the way, they would be talking about a prop. They'd be talking about Prosecco chips, which were named after a crew member. It's kind of interesting. There we go. There they are, Prosecco chips. But I'm going to be honest, it's not the stuff that I tuned into a commentary before. I prefer to hear someone with a voice absolutely ravaged by a recent cold, who's having to take frequent breaks so she can drink water and keep going. Just sort of focusing on tiny minutiae of the story. That's really what I go for, and I hope you do as well. Here is also, now getting back onto serious stuff, here is the interesting thing where they have to work for a new audience and the old audience, and this is very on the nose meta play here, where all the fans of the original are super aware of them replaying scenes from the original in a new context, where they will know what we are expecting and they are playing off those expectations of the long-term fans, whilst Mindy herself is watching that very scene. So there are deep, deep levels of meta here that I very much appreciate, and they stay on the right side of it. They stop it being obnoxious. I do want to say at this point that I felt Liv here, played by Sonia Amar, she gets kind of a rough deal. I think she was a lot more of an interesting character than they give her the chance to play. This is, I believe, her first film. She's usually a model. But I think it's nice that she's not timid. I watched a few interviews for this, and total contrast to what I expected. She was very bold and confident in interviews, as was Jasmine Savoy Brown, who, like, how can I say, extremely overcharged energy she brought to everything. In contrast, Mikey Madison was so reserved. Mikey Madison, who plays Amber, she was so reserved in it. It really surprised me. As you can see the acting when she manages to play Amber, because in real life she was coming across as so timid. Now here we have that excellent reveal about this being the Stumacher house, and it is delivered in such a great way. Yep, now the shot just lets it sink in. You know, I've been harsh on the commentary, but they did do a really good job on this point when they were talking about the camera crew were instructed not to give the game away. Which isn't too hard, to be fair. A lot of modernisation has happened here, but they shot it from angles so that it was harder to recognise unless you're a super nerd. But that shot reversing out of the door, I absolutely loved it. This shot also gets a contrast between the costumes. You'll notice that the stab Ghostface is a lot more like the Scream 1 and Scream 2 Ghostface, with a lot less of the detail in the material. If you see it up close, it's actually a very dark grey with a slight sort of glittery bits. It's quite an odd material if you want to be very authentic about it. I'm sure all of you were super concerned with that. There is Sam picking up a candlestick again. That is something that bugged me. I rewound a bunch to make sure there were actually 2 candlesticks originally, because I am a very fun person. But we've seen this escalation now for the finale. I love it. That was a lot of fun for a fan of the original, I've got to say. And now we've got everyone gathered in one place. The original commentary actually calls this a Agatha Christie moment. They reference Christie in the commentary for Scream 6 as well. I had some major problems with that. They make a use of a terrible device, but I won't get drawn into that here. This is a far less offensive Agatha Christie reference that they do. Now I should point out that they, as well as trying to keep it secret that they were using the Stumacher house, they did other things to try and maintain the secrecy. Specifically filming under the name Parkside Alpha, which I would echo in Scream 6. They filmed that as Blackmore. I won't go into the meta behind that. Maybe if you want to hear it, leave it in a comment, I'll answer. But they also, a la Scream 2, to stop leaks getting out, they reused the tactic of giving people different scripts with completely different endings and characters given completely different names. And the idea behind that was just as much confusion as possible. And as you find out from an interview with Marley Shelton, it really was individuated. Like, little things in character names and certain details differed in every person's script, which makes it a lot easier to work out who's leaking if some details come out. Very clever. Also, when they did the first table read, they only read up to Act 2. Which means, presumably, they stopped just before this point. Now, I would query whether or not this is the third act. I don't believe so. I think it's more of a fourth act. For me, Act 1 starts when they actually Act 1 ends when they contact Dewey for the first time and get refused. Act 2 ends with the death of Dewey, and then I think Act 3 probably ends just when we get the reveal of the house. So for me, this feels a lot more like a fourth act, but that's perhaps immaterial. It probably doesn't help the understanding of the film. Let's move on. But why would Amber say that? Well, she'd say that because, again, Richie and Amber, as we'll find out, want to create something, to live something that can be adapted as a sad film. So they are consciously being cinematic. Again, just as with Billy and Stu, this is cinematic logic. This is people acting as if they were in a horror movie, and that is what makes it work. So that is something I really enjoy, and it shows that the filmmakers understand Scream when they're writing this. This is all good. This works so well. I've kind of skipped over massively here the fact that Gail got shot, but there's so much you want to try and get into a commentary. It's tough. So this was something else I really liked, that Gail actually had to stop and give Sydney a reason to go into the house. You know, really, Sydney should be taking Gail to the hospital straight away. She just got shot. But Gail insists she go and do it. And now that actually comes from Neve Campbell herself. Neve demanded that there be a reason why Sydney would do that. And she also wanted to have a reason why Sydney would pause in front of the house, basically for dramatic effect when we got that lovely shot. So, you know, learning these things about the movie, it really impressed me. This evolution that we're seeing of her, I love it. What I'm talking about here is Sydney is over it. She's been through this so many times. She's scared, but she's also not impressed by ghost faces. She's not as intimidated. She's not playing their game. So this extreme, brutal pragmatism of going through, shooting every door, hanging up the phone on him, it is from someone who's been through this a bunch of times and knows not to be sort of forced into playing Ghostface's game. I love it. It's a great character moment. Things are intensifying here fantastically. I like that she, in that phone call, called out derivative. You know, this is derivative. Christ, it's the same house. It's again, charges you could make of the film that they are very aware of. They're playing the meta game, but also it works with the killer's motivations. They very deliberately want to do it back in the same house so that they can get their motive done of relaunching the franchise. They have a good in-world justification for what they're doing. And there we have the reveal of Richie being the second Ghostface. Now, I know that Eric Kripke, who is the creator, I should say the director and producer of the TV version of The Boys, he was contacted by the filmmakers and he vouched for Jack Quaid and his ability to do this, confirmed that he was good to work with, and also confirmed that he had the range to do the villainy as well. And I think that's clearly well placed. Jack Quaid is very strong on this. Yeah, it always looks a little weird when you see someone actually do the Ghostface voice on screen. I know it happened in the original with Billy in the kitchen, but it did come across as a tad odd, I've got to say. I'm glad they don't do it too much. Absolute star that he is. When they have the Ghostface calls, Roger L. Jackson, who is the voice of Ghostface and a very accomplished voice actor, he is on the line most of the time. He certainly was for the Tara phone call. But I gather from the commentary that actually sometimes he just provided samples, which I found a tad odd. I thought he was usually on set for it every time. I gather not in every case. Now, we also here had another bonus for the fans, you know, a great tribute to Dewey, because Dewey here is right about Richie. He's learned from experience, just like Sydney. I like that. You can, when you've got a moment to think about it, because so much is going on here, when you've got a moment to think, you can pick this up, and it's nice that they just acknowledge Dewey was completely correct. Now we're at the big subject of Scream 5, the major issue we've got to discuss, that is toxic fandom. I referenced earlier how I thought this was very badly done, and we might as well discuss that now. And I guess it comes to two main areas. One, what is toxic fandom? You know, if it's literal maniacs going out and killing people, it's a bit daft, yes. We can all agree that's crazy, but I think that's a bit of a Mott and Bailey game. Really what toxic fandom is, I guess, people like me, people who care, pointing out that series have gone downhill, and doing higher level commentary that is very incisively dissecting exactly what has gone wrong in unflinching detail. Something that the internet and our access to video editing software has made it a lot easier to do. And I think studios are basically coping about this, really saying it's very unfair and we're toxic. I don't agree with it. And Scream 5 shouldn't agree with it either. You won't get much clarity from the filmmakers' commentary on what they mean by toxic fandom, by the way. I won't waste your time with that. They literally never make a clear point. But this film kind of argues against it because they show you a lot of Stab 8. And Stab 8 is demonstrably trash. They made it look trash. So, is the fandom really daft for thinking it's terrible? It seems hard to think so. And so Richie and Amber's plan is to reboot, to go back to the beginning, to take the grounded legacy characters everyone loves, go back to a setting everyone likes, and start from a strong place. Now, how are they wrong? This is obviously, it's their plan, and it's what Scream 5 has to show. So, if their plan is bad, does that mean Scream 5 is bad? Does that mean Scream 5 has to be a bad movie? I think those are inseparable ideas, basically. So you cannot have their plan be bad without saying that Scream 5 has a bad plot, and I don't think they do. So what I'm trying to get at, the criticism of the toxic fandom and the desire to reconnect with what the fans know and love, it's not saying what the film might be intending to say. If this is our attempt to attack toxic fandom and put us back in our place, well, I'm going to say it failed terribly, and that is something they need to reconsider. There's also something Amber mentioned a minute and a half ago about Stab movies lacking on Michael Myers, which I thought was kind of an odd claim. You know, Ghostface kind of is your Michael Myers, and it's always had great continuity in the legacy characters, so that was also an odd thing for her to say. It always stuck out to me. I also really like Richie's line that he said, it was so perfect it almost felt like a real-life retcon. Here is where Richie gives us a little tribute to Dewey, showing Dewey was right, and if I couldn't like him enough already, he also says, I guess being a sexually available woman is meant to be empowering these days. Very based, Richie, very based. Yeah, I don't think Sam really has a retort to that. I think this is meant to make him a terrible misogynist, but it's not like he's actually wrong, and this is part of that very interesting strand of where horror is genuinely reactionary in a way that I think people don't pick up on. When they're just trying to write a good horror story, they end up revealing a lot of very instinctive values. You may have also noticed next to the phone was a monkey's paw. Is that a reference to Monkey Paw Productions, Jordan Peele's studio? Maybe it is. I should say production company, not studio. Everything's kind of kicking off now that people have moved to the kitchen, and I did think it was wonderfully self-aware that Amber basically says we've got to go back to the kitchen because, you know, that's where we have our finale. We're going to get one of our problems. That is, The problem of object permanence. I like Scream 5 a lot, a heck of a lot, but we have an object permanence issue here, and it's extremely obvious in these fights. There are a lot of moving parts to manage here. There are 2 locations, and I'm very sad to say that the film is going to kind of cheat you a little bit while it tries to resolve this so that things happen in the right order. So we have Sydney, Gail and Amber in the kitchen. We have Tara now out in the hall, but kind of, where is she? Yeah, you're not going to see her for a while. She was up and about, but don't worry about it. And of course, Richie and Sam are off in the hallway, and they're going to move upstairs in a bit. So 3 groups you kind of have to focus on. If you try and work out logically what all of them are doing at any one point, or how the timeline resolves while these things are happening simultaneously, you will have some problems. I'll also add to this, anytime I see someone choking someone in a fight in a movie, it's like, okay, you're going to lose this fight. Choking is the go-to move if you want to lose a Hollywood fight. It is just a time delay, so something can help, something can come to your rescue, or you can reach a laser gun that slid just slightly out of reach. This death for Amber, it is a tiny bit indulgent in that you're getting a bit more movie logic than pure realism, and the setup for her to be able to set her face on fire there. Personally, I would have had that hob just going anyway. But I'm simple like that. It was a tiny bit contrived for her to be able to get the hob on, even if it leads to an absolutely wonderful payoff. Obviously, any fans of Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood will have seen Mikey Madison get burned alive before. I don't know, maybe she's just got a really burnable face, I don't know. It might have been a tribute. This was filmed in September 2020 onwards, so maybe they had seen it. So you note at this point, Sydney and Gail have won their fight. So what are they doing? You know, are they just waiting around in the kitchen catching their breath? Where is Tara? She'll get back to us. She'll come along in a second. I feel like I'm being harsh, but you know, I like Scream 5, but this is leaning quite a bit on the movie logic. This is leaning quite a bit on the movie logic where you give them time, but I know, I guess, are we wondering, is Richie kind of embodying the movie logic and letting it happen? Is he enjoying seeing the victim crawl away because it resembles something he's seen in movies? I like to think that. I could go with that and believe that for why he's really setting himself up to suffer. And if you're wondering how much he's suffering, there are, I think, 22 stabs that I counted here. Yeah, this dude is absolutely ventilated.
Now, I'd hate to be so callous as to nitpick this, that would be terribly pedantic, but while we're here, let's just take a moment to notice the absolute lack of continuity for any of the blood splattering on Sam's face. Just check that out now.
I've got to say, I love this shot. I love the look of all of this. This is savage. It's giving Scream 5 that brutal edge that updates it, but I don't think takes it too far out of the Scream world. And having Sam there wipe the blade off, yeah, that shows them that they know exactly what world they're in. If you're wondering, by the way, why there are all the bird portraits around the house, that is another Wes Craven tribute. He was a very keen ornithologist outside of the horror movie world. So if you were just wondering what was going on with that, there you go. And I should say that since Sam just did that blade cleaning move, the origin of that is quite interesting and accidental. It was to fix a continuity error in the first movie after Billy is supposedly stabbed in the bedroom. They needed a shot of, the next shot they had was Ghostface with a clean knife. And so they were wondering, well, hang on, it should have Billy's blood all over it, right? So they did an insert shot where Ghostface wipes the blade clean with his gloved hands. And that stuck and became a bit of a signature move. These sort of details, like the knife cleaning move or little in-jokes, they're nice. But I think what really makes Scream 5 feel like it's actually part of the Scream franchise is the understanding of the logic. It's understanding the Wes Craven rule and understanding and making these tributes to him. That's what actually makes it belong, rather than something that just has the outward appearance of a Scream movie. It understands the importance, there we go, of family. And that little thumbs up move, yes, between Chad and Mindy, for long-term fans of this, you will recognise that that is a thumbs up move that saved Dewey. He originally died in the first movie, but Wes Craven did an extra take where they got David Arquette to just give us a thumbs up. And then that was used, so Dewey lived. You can see Jamie Kennedy on his own YouTube channel talk about how he got the role of Scream. And in role of Randy in Scream and Scream 2. And it's so interesting how much of the film comes together just in the edit, that Dewey's fate was decided in the editing room, not in the script. And I always find that quite fascinating. People had a little bit of fun pointing out that Gail and Sydney here have been stabbed, have been shot, and the paramedics have decided that basically a nice comfy blankie is the extent of the treatment they need. I'm not going to say that's an unfair criticism, but at this point in the movie it doesn't bother me hugely. What I really want to focus on here is this is such a lovely handoff. It is such a wonderful way of passing off between the legacy characters to the new characters. And I would have been very happy if this was the last we saw of Gail and Sydney. I really would have been. It's a great tribute. Certainly far better than what was done to them in Scream 6. Ending on Gail saying that all she wants to do now is write a tribute to Dewey, I found that so moving. I found that so lovely. It's a kind of character growth that I think closes off an arc for her in a really lovely, maybe bittersweet way. And it's a great tribute to her. Sydney got a great close off. I feel Dewey and Gail getting married quite happily in 3 was nice, but then it's been problematised ever since. This change so that she just writes a tribute to him and she gives up the tacky crime reporting. That really does feel like a wonderful send-off arc for Gail. And my goodness, I wish they'd stuck with it. Your reminder here that this is a set. And yeah, we're leaning full on movie logic at this point. Direct tribute to the original with a brand new newscaster in a wonderfully tacky suit. Gail would approve. In the original, the song that was being played was Whisper to a Scream, which I really loved. I found myself just looking in the windows. Am I missing something? Is there going to be like a tribute? Is there going to be a hint of a third killer or something? No. We close off with for Wes, obviously. There were so many tributes to him. Obviously, Wes Hicks is named after him, and his death enables them to get a big tribute banner for Wes. And it's a really nice touch. Wes Craven's an interesting guy, you know. He died tragically young, 2015. And it was very important that they get this right. And I think in the emphasis on family, I think he would have been happy with this movie. There's an attention to detail that I think he'd have approved of. And this song playing right now is a good example of that. This is a song called Fall Out of Love by Salem, and I'd just invite you to really listen to the music. They asked for this to be re-recorded as a duo, so it brought in a female vocalist into it. And I think that's because the filmmakers kind of viewed Scream 5 as a duet. It's working with Wes Craven's world, Wes Craven's characters, and they're just adding into it. So yeah, remaking a song as a duet, yeah, I can see the logic in that. It's also the very first line of it is like an apparition appeared in the kitchen, you know, an apparition like a ghost, like ghost face. If you want to accuse me of a massive reach, well, I'll let you off at that. We're quite far into the movie at this point. I can take the accusation of a reach. When you saw that forewears, you'll have also heard a little bird cry, and that was a whippoorwill. Again, Wes Craven, noted ornithologist. They really did make this a very knowing tribute, and it's very much appreciated. I've always loved how these movies close off, showing the cast, the dramatis personae, with a little clip from the film. The way I tend to think of it is almost like just a reminder to you all that this is just a movie. It's a horror story, but remember, it's not the real world. It's just a movie that you've seen. It's very important when you're considering it's a film about people taking the movies too seriously. I don't know, maybe I read too much into that. When we're past all of these, I might end the commentary there. As I said, I wanted to do this particularly for Scream 5 because the official commentary annoyed me so much with how much it dealt with things that weren't important, didn't tell you anything about the characters or the story or decisions made about the film. And I hope I balanced that out. It is, for me, a much, much better effort than Scream 6. It corrected a lot of the mistakes of Scream 4. And the fact that it took the original so seriously and kind of showed me characters I'd grown up with, you know, now mature like I am, it's... I think that's the best way of saying it. It's a film I've grown up with, and it just, having matured as well alongside it, yeah, it means a lot to me. I hope I've, oh shit, I'm struggling. Okay, let's go back a bit more. It does mean a lot to me. I hope what I've done here is provide a better commentary than you would otherwise get on the Blu-ray, or at least show you a complementary side of the movie that you wouldn't see elsewise, and maybe given you a deeper understanding of it. That is what I'm hoping to do with this. But if you got this far, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll check out the rest of the commentaries that I do as part of this project. And the obvious thing, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Yeah, I've been Proper Horror Show. I hope you enjoyed this commentary, and I will leave you to enjoy the rest of the soundtrack here by Dylan Minette's band, actually. Dylan, who played Wes Hicks. I'll sign off here, folks. Take it easy. Tschüss.